Explain character health, please.
Character health is when it's not just all about me and I
Mhm.
have an appropriate relationship with the universe,
Okay. It's a balance.
a
It's a
wholesome,
balance.
you know, character impaired people have toxic, abusive relationships with every, as the analysts used to call it, with every single object in
Yep.
their lives, including their substances of choice.
Right. Mhm.
They treat everything else that exists like it exists for them and for their gratification and for their exploitation.
And
That's the problem.
and it's interesting just to do a little twist on the word object. If they treat everything like an object, including a person, well, a job object doesn't require empathy or sympathy. Not
Exactly. So the first commandment is through various actions coming to appreciate the inherent interconnectedness of everything, the inherent part that you are of a much bigger something, way bigger than you, and developing some capacity to care about the impact of your very presence, let alone the nature of your actions. And that's the beginning of what I call character.
so so you go from the world is not the world doesn't revolve around me. We are all a part of a constantly evolving universe that can be beautiful if we want to look at and know it.
Right.
And and so I love that commandment.
And here's the problem in our day and time why I say that character disturbance is so epidemic. It is natural for all of us. We all, as infants, we all start out thinking that the world is our oyster, that it exists to serve our needs, that we are the center of the universe. That's natural and normal. We
Right,
have to grow our way out of that.
right,
But here's the problem. We live in an age so unlike the Victorian age where every part of our social structure inhibits our ability to grow out of this narcissism.
right.
It's crazy. The amount
Yes,
of entitlement, the amount of relativism, the amount of exploitation, the amount of mutual use and abuse. It is so prevalent, so rampant. We've gotten so desensitized
right.
to it because it crept up on us incrementally and got so egregious. I mean, some of the things that happen or that people do or say these days, we're shocked initially,
Right. Yes.
and then we stop being shocked
Yep.
because they become all too commonplace.
Yes.
So people can't grow up in character in this crazy environment. And
Right.
the only way we can turn things around is one heart at a time, starting with our own.
That's beautiful. One heart at a time. I want to add that, people cannot develop, embrace, and be motivated to evolve in their character because the world has become increasingly controlled by disordered individuals.
Yes.
And if we look at this as a relationship, a codependent pathological narcissist relationship, the codependent can never find an identity because that threatens the pathological narcissist, the character disordered person, and that threat has to be put down. And so what you say is done at a global level, at a species level. And if we ever have a time, and not today, I'd like to talk to you about my anthropological evolutionary explanation for it, going back to chimpanzees. But that's another time.
Yeah,
But please
maybe
continue.
another time. I've given that incredible thought too. The sociopaths and psychopaths that are running the show these days, they had great, indispensable value back in the Stone Age.
Oh yeah,
They were the ones that got us here.
I don't know if this term still exists. A productive narcissist, Steve
Yeah,
Jobs.
but the pendulum is swinging in the opposite direction. As a matter of fact, I work with some very forward-leaning corporate leaders, and
Yeah.
they're visionaries who believe that we can even work with the folks with the power and the control, slowly impacting their hearts as well.
Wow.
And we
That's
we are
ambitious.
working we are working to develop models that are effective. And frankly, some of the successes that we've found have startled even us. There is a way to reach the human heart, and you will find out very quickly whether the DNA that comprises that heart is so devoid of even empathy capacity that you're probably wasting your time. I do know one person, for example, that the only real benefit to any counsel was to get them to be a more civil psychopath. They will never really care about people like most of us would like to think that people
Right.
can care about people, but at least they're not whacking people anymore.
Right.
Okay. At least they're not doing the worst kinds of things, but they're not changing their stripes entirely. They're just changing, moderating their modus operandi.
I created a YouTube video and I said, you can change a narcissist only by conditioning. And you can't change the way they think, because narcissists will do things that make them feel good. And if they're evolved enough, avoid things that make them feel badly. And if they can't manipulate you, they can't get into your head, and they know that every time they do this, you do that, well, their behavior will modify, but not so necessarily the way they think. But it sounds like that's more of a basic part of your thought. So please continue.
Well, and in my book, Essentials for the Journey, I'm allowed to tell this one story. I still altered some of the circumstances so that the person can't be completely identified. Nobody would actually know who this person is, but it's a real case of an individual who is definitely, without question, on the narcissism spectrum.
Right.
And who came to me one day because he had been dealt a bad deal in life. He was only married a very short time before his wife was involved in a very serious car accident that left her to some degree permanently disabled and somewhat disfigured facially because she had to have a lot of reconstructive surgery. So all of a sudden, this guy who had everything and who felt entitled to everything, felt like he deserved everything, was wondering why such a horrible thing had befallen him. And of course, he wanted my permission to say, you know what, I don't deserve this. I deserve so much better. And of course, I wouldn't do that for him. I left him with his own conscience to wrestle with. And fortunately, he had enough of a conscience. Not all narcissists do, but some do have.
And that's why the continuum is brilliant. And I'm so glad you developed it.
And so I tell the story about how this man comes up to me many years later. I didn't even recognize him.
Yeah.
He's got a beautiful family. His wife is still disabled, but they've been married 30 plus years.
Yeah.
He has a wonderful career. He's well beloved. And it was all in that one confrontation,
right,
where I didn't give him what he wanted, but by the grace of God, I gave him apparently what he needed in the way of a benign confrontation about where he was on his character path. And that has made all the difference. So those stories happen.
Yes.
And, you know, and maybe it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, but I really believe
you should.
I really sincerely believe that I am giving what I have been given first.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Yes, I understand why now you said that.
Yeah.
You are a part of the universe that you have your own ego, your own ambitions, but you are connected to the greater good of humanity, and you want to make a difference. And that comes from, not to get spiritual here, but that comes from inside you or your heart.
Right. Why not get spiritual about it? It's the truth.
Okay, well then we will. But that type of energy, that type of, and I say generalized love, that resonates, that connects to most people, but amazingly to that person. Because as I understand pathological narcissists, people with personality disorders, NPD especially, they were once children who just wanted to be loved, who were crushed at a very early age. And I'm simplifying it, of course.
Sometimes
Yes,
they can be the overindulged.
they want to be loved, but they have so much shame that they don't even realize it. And it's cordoned off in their unconscious, etc. You, like a horse whisperer, you spoke their language and they heard it. They trusted you. They let down their walls and they were able to keep it alive in their consciousness. And that's amazing that you did that. So please toot your horn. That's something to toot.
Well,
bring out the trumpet.
I don't mind even somewhat authoritatively stating the case. But once again, I really sincerely believe that everything decent that I have given was given to me first. Either I was instructed by people in horrible relationships, I was instructed by the universe with the ability to see something that had been missed up until then, or whatever the case. But there isn't anything that I invented myself that I can claim credit for. So I think one of the things that allows me to speak with such conviction about a lot of these things is that I have an appreciation for where it comes from.
Right. I look at this as my book could not have been written. Everything that I have done in my 35 years of psychotherapy and helping people heal, if I did not come from a really screwed up family and had so many problems because it was, whether it was God-given or it was part of the universe or my genetic, there was a part of me that wanted to overcome it and teach. Well, how could I teach what people didn't know if there wasn't an explanation for it? And
Right.
somehow, I don't know if I would do it over again, but every one of my painful mistakes, relationship mistakes, I came out of it with this yearning to figure it out and then talk about it and explain it. And that's the gift. And
Exactly.
if I had
That's
to do it
how,
over again,
yeah,
I would choose
the
it
words
that way.
come to me that in the universe's healing of you and instruction of you in your own healing, you experienced at a level necessary to experience what a lot of other people might need in their own healing journey. And that's just how this benevolent universe works.
Yes.
Part of the first commandment in my book, Essentials for the Journey, is appreciating just how undeserved, unmerited this fantastic gift that we have,
Yeah.
that we thumb our noses at or take for granted or various things. Just look at what we're doing to our planet,
Right.
because we have a tendency to somehow think that we're entitled to the breaths that were granted so generously and that we didn't do anything to merit.
Right.
That's where it all starts. It all
Yeah.
starts from that awareness that we're part of something so overwhelmingly, genuinely loving and generous, something instructing us in what real love looks like. Because unfortunately, today, what traps people so frequently is all the things that resemble love that aren't, but they're close enough to hook you.
Hmm.
Whether it be, I say that folks who get into narcissistic relationships are seduced by the interest that the narcissist shows,
Right.
and they mistake interest for regard. A
Right.
person could be very, very interested in you for a variety of reasons. They may think you make great arm candy. They may see financial exploitation available to them. They may see all kinds of things in you that they desire immensely. That doesn't mean they have one bit of positive regard for you. And it doesn't even mean that they have the capacity of regard for you.
Right.
So until you really understand what, and as you pointed out earlier, most of us have childhood experiences that don't teach us.
Or teach us the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the nature of the human condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And It's interesting that when I started to put my ideas into words that became a training, that became a book, I just started realizing how brilliant John Bowlby virtually created what we understand as attachment theory. And
Mm,
then I found all these other brilliant people that had so many bits and pieces of information that I could put together to explain why people turned out loving themselves and wanting, needing, and attracting similarly self-loving people, or why they kept repeating the same curse of falling in love with someone who's going to hurt them, and they are not able to either protect themselves or get out of the relationship. Talk more about those 10 commandments. So it sounds like you were talking about the first commandment, and we moved into the wonderful spiritual realm.
It starts with an appreciation for our inherent interconnectedness and being a part of something so grand that
Yeah.
it's really hard to wrap our heads around. You know, the Jewish folks have a word when it comes to understanding this God that we say we worship but don't. Ineffable.
So what does
Um,
ineffable mean?
it means you really just can't. There's no way to adequately
Yeah.
say or express
Right.
adequately this profound reality,
Right.
this extraordinary, perfect, self-emptying, benevolent love that
Right.
is behind all things and sustains all things. There's just no way to do it.
The
So it
human
starts
mind.
with
Yeah.
some rudimentary kind of awakening.
Okay.
That's where it starts. But then it moves beyond that to overcoming any sense of entitlement, any sense of self focus. It goes on to an appreciation for what I call the truth. And that is basically wanting to really know, not vainly, not your own spin, not the validity of your own perceptions, but to really know, to humbly really seek and know what is true, what is real, to know yourself and all the dirty little secrets inside that none of us want to reckon with, all the little things that make us human. Um, as humans, we have this animal legacy.
Hmm.
This, but as humans, we also have this unique capacity to be more. But
Right.
until we face all of that stuff inside us and own it, and then in love, choose to discipline it, to regulate it, to
Mm.
regulate ourselves, to
Hmm.
operate in the world in a mindful way, we will never develop good character. And so that's the midway point of character growth. And it all ends up with, in the last commandment, it all ends up with the capacity to genuinely love.
Right.
And that commandment, the last one, has to do with loving as abundantly as we know how to love, because it will change you.
Right.
It will make you better. And guess what? It'll make the world better too at the same time.
What I hear from you resonates with this idea that I have, or part of my own theory, my own steps, is that without the development of self-love, you cannot and should not seek an intimate relationship, because the ghosts of your past are going to lead you in the wrong direction and towards maybe another pathological narcissist. So with self-love and the commandment before the last, and I'm assuming this applies to both people who are character challenged and what I call self-love deficient challenge, is this congruence between feelings and thoughts, integration with parts of yourself that were split off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I agree with you. But I do also see it as kind of an ideal situation that
right,
somebody doesn't form an intimate relationship until they really know how to love themselves well. I wish that were practically possible.
well, but it's how you define self-love,
Yeah.
because in my stage 10, it follows the mastery of self-love abundance, which takes about a year in treatment. Then you're going to make all these mistakes that have challenges. It's like being 19 or 20 and dating. You now have and come from a healthy family. You now have the psychological foundation to make good choices, but you also have to learn. And so what I say is someone who has achieved self-love abundance, now they can start learning through their mistakes, trial and error, what they should have learned when they were younger.
I get angry. I get what I think is justifiably angry with the allied professions. When I was in school, there were only 3 or 4 major professions. Now there's a gazillion,
Oh yeah.
all claiming to be able to help you get a life. There's so many folks that dare to tell you that they can help you lead a better life. And what I get angry about is the egoistic and largely inaccurate terminology thrown about out there that, once again, kind of like false love, has enough resemblance to the real thing to hook you
Yeah.
and make you think that this person has something, but
Well,
in the end will hurt you because it's not true.
well, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but it is an kind of an echo of a personality disordered, character disordered person. You are trying to get something with for yourself while pretending that you're going to give something back in return in the process of not being honest. Using the analogy of a character disorder, you actually believe it.
Right. And that's
And
why in the book, Essentials for the Journey, I describe that attitude toward the truth, what you're talking about, the greater truth,
yeah,
as real reverence. You have to develop real reverence for it. Um, and to revere something is to hold it in a place, to take off your shoes in the presence, so to speak, and
like,
say, this is big. This has
yeah,
value. And to humbly approach and say, you know what? Uh, who am I to play fast and loose with this? And the folks that play fast and loose with the truth today are so abundant and so egregious. Oh my goodness, you can't turn on the television. You can't even turn on some of the best news programs
right,
without hearing nothing but dribble,
dribble,
nothing but
or
self-serving.
propaganda.
Oh my gosh.
But it goes to what you said earlier, is our society has become hyper influenced and somewhat controlled by people with self-serving, manipulative self-interest that
Well, this is why I say that, and I sincerely believe that we have to change the world only one way, as Dr. King said, one heart at a time, starting with
yeah,
our own. And the
yes,
reason is that for several decades now, we've had this classic vicious cycle going on, this classic vicious cycle,
mm-hmm,
whereby as more and more character deficient or challenged people populated the society itself took on a character, a zeitgeist, an atmosphere that reflected all the pathology within it. And a lot of the institutions and structures meant to promote character corrupted and disintegrated. Some disappeared altogether. And as a result of that, more and more character deficient people entered the society. And then that further corrupted the
right.
society. And that further corrupted the individual's character development. And that it's a classic vicious cycle. So, how do you break any vicious cycle?
Please tell me.
At its simplest, weakest point,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you have to intervene. At the point most likely to get you in,
Okay, and that
right?
is
And that is the human heart,
the human heart.
starting with our own.
Right.
Because if my heart is right and the person I'm trying to engage with senses it
Yeah.
intuitively, I'm,
And
I'm going to get in and we're going to make a difference together.
and according to the holy scripture of United Airlines manual, put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on your child.
That's correct.
And you cannot do anyone good if you cannot breathe. But what would you like to say in summary or to wrap things up?
I want to say that there is nothing that we can't do better than all of the structures in the world that are failing us. So it's up to us. The reason we have this mess is because, and I'm going to be very careful with this, but I mean it, it sounds rough, but because we didn't know better and we allowed it to happen.
Right.
We didn't realize what we were letting happen because we didn't have enough knowledge about ourselves and about how to take better care of ourselves. And so we let this happen, not maliciously, but kind of ignorantly, and the exploiters among us took advantage.
Yes,
but we can change it. We have immense power, and there is absolutely nothing we can't do better than the structures that are out there proclaiming that they can do it for us. So it starts with knowing oneself and loving oneself. You know, I sound like all the ancient sages, saying the same things over and over again.
Yeah,
but we don't listen.
And you're also singing my song, or the song that I identify with. So please, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, and so if I were to confront any grandiosity, Ross, I would say it's not your song, but you heard the tune too. I like that. Yeah, there's resonance there. There's resonance. And I just want people to leave with that thought that we can really turn things around. That we're at a precipice here. We're at both a precipice and a threshold, I think.
Yes. And
I do believe that things are moving around. This consulting firm that I work with sometimes that deals with the high-powered folks is dedicated to changing minds and hearts in the boardrooms, also in softening the hearts of those who have been historically only concerned about their levels of compensation and about the bottom line and appeasing investors, as opposed to making this world a better place because they were in it. Right. And so I have some hope.
Yes,
I do.
Everyone, listen to this man. George, gosh, I am honored. I am grateful. And boy, it was even fun hearing you talk and sharing some of my ideas with you. You're a good man, and you have important things that people should consider. Do you have a website or a place that
I have a website? It's drgeorgesimon.com, drgeorgesimon.com. Got a Facebook page, a YouTube channel where my podcasts presently are, or my Facebook page.
Buy his books.
Oh, yeah. I am having such hope for Essentials for the Journey. Everything we've talked about, my life's work, my deepest commitment is in that book.
Yes. Well, you are a gift to my path, a man whose wisdom and knowledge I admire and revere. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you for being a part of this podcast.
Anytime. Anytime.
So thank you. Thank you so much. And let's keep in touch.
Okay. Will do.
You take care.
You too. Bye-bye.